Chapter 23. Blackmail. Tommy stared blankly ahead for a few moments with the phone still pressed to his ear, trying to process what Tubbo just told him. He was fucked. Completely and utterly fucked.
Boss man? You still there? Did you go into shock?
Tubbo asked, his voice crackling a bit over the phone speaker.
I'm here,
Tommy muttered, ignoring the worried glances from Wilbur and the rest of the syndicate.
Was that all he said? Actually, he made us take a video of him saying his demands. I just kind of paraphrased it for you.
Tubbo explained, his voice shaking.
Do you want me to send you the video?
Gulping, Tommy nodded before remembering Tubbo couldn't see that over the phone. Yeah, do that.
Alright. Are you still at the meeting?
Yep, we were in the middle of talking about shit when you called. Tubbo made a noise of sympathy.
You need to tell them about this, okay? They'll help you work it out. Rombu and I are going to head back to the Soot House and we'll be waiting there when you get back.
Okay. I'll see you soon, Tubbo. Tommy told him, biting his lip. Stay safe out there.
Will do. And don't worry, Tommy. We're not letting you go to prison.
Tubbo reassured him, although he didn't sound too confident as he said that. The reassurance fell flat, though, because Tommy knew there was no way Tubbo could promise that. No one could really promise that right now. If Dream had evidence of Tommy healing the syndicate like he claimed, he could turn Tommy in at any time, and there'd be nothing Tommy could do about it. He would just be fucked. Bye, Tubbo, Tommy said before hanging up the phone. A few seconds after he hung up, he got a ding notification and saw Tubbo had texted him 2 videos, one that looked like grainy security footage, and one with Dream standing in the center of the thumbnail. Tommy flinched when he saw the still image of Dream, and was too focused on the phone to notice Wilbur leaning over his shoulder until it was too late.
Why the fuck did Tubbo send you a video of Dream?
Wilbur asked, eyes widening. When Tommy was silent, Wilbur grabbed his chin and forced him to look up and meet his gaze.
Tommy, come on, what the hell was that call about?
Shit. Tommy had to explain what was going on, and everyone in the syndicate was going to freak out. Great, just what he needed.
Apparently, Dream ran into Tubbo and Ranbu while they were on patrol and told them to pass along a message to me.
Tommy started, his eyes dropping to the table.
Tubbo has a video of it.
Wilbur narrowed his eyes.
Then let's play it.
Slide it to the center of the table so we can all hear it. Phil ordered, a shudder ruffling his feathers behind him. Nodding, Tommy turned his volume all the way up and pushed the phone to the center of the table as ordered. Then, he leaned over and pressed the play button.
Tommy.
Dream's voice rang out over the tinny speakers, and just hearing Dream say his name again was enough to make Tommy's heart leap into his throat.
If you're watching this, then you know I ran into your friends Ender and Nuke, and they were kind enough to let me pass on a message to you.
Behind the camera, Tommy heard Tubbo mutter a
"Fuck you."
He would have smiled at that if the situation were anything less dire.
Anyway, I'm just gonna get straight to the point. With 404's help, I managed to find CCTV footage of you healing Siren, for presumably the first time. If you don't believe me, I'm sending a copy to Nuke so he can send it to you. But the gist is that I can use this footage to send out a warrant for your arrest. Now, I haven't sent it to the Hero Committee yet, because frankly, I don't want to arrest you. You're just a kid who got caught up in shit he shouldn't have, and I don't think you deserve to be punished for that.
That's fucking rich coming from him, Wilbur muttered, his jaw clenched.
I'll give you a few days to decide, but if you don't want to get arrested, then you need to give me what I want.
Dream paused then, folding his arms over his chest.
And don't even think about trying to skip town, Tommy. If I find out that you left the city, then the next time I see any syndicate member, including your precious little vigilante friends over here, since it's obvious you're all working together now, I'll kill them. I don't want to, but if it's what needs to be done, then I'll do it. We're not part of the— Don't bullshit me, Ender,
Dream said, cutting off Ender, who wasn't in view of the camera.
You worked with the Syndicate to help Tommy escape from me. In my eyes, and in the eyes of the committee, that makes you villains now, and I've already had you both reclassified as such.
What? That's not fucking true, though!
Tubbo protested.
Shouldn't work with villains, then.
Dream shrugged.
Anyway, that's all I have to say to Tommy. You can end the video now, Nuke.
And with that, the video ended, and Tommy felt like he was going to throw up. There was a moment of silence as everyone at the table stared at the phone, all with similar expressions of horror painting their faces. After a few agonizing beats, Techno spoke up.
Well, that's a problem. Yeah, no shit, Techno,
Wilbur hissed. Will, don't snap at your brother. Phil cut in, giving his son a stern look. Now I know the situation isn't ideal, but we can't start panicking at the first sign of trouble. We knew Dream was going to retaliate at some point for Tommy's escape, and now we know what his strategy is. Tommy, did Tubbo send you the footage Dream mentioned? Sam then said, sounding much calmer than anyone else. Tommy nodded. Can I see the footage? Dream might be bullshitting when he says it's enough to get you arrested. I know what kind of footage the Hero Committee would consider strong enough to send out an arrest warrant, so I want to make sure he's not bluffing. Oh, yeah, sure. Standing up out of his chair, Tommy reached over to grab his phone from the middle of the table. He pulled up the second video Tubbo had sent, and walked around to Sam's chair, holding the phone in front of him so he could watch. Wilbur, of course, followed Tommy and stood over his shoulder to watch as well, while everyone else stayed in their seats. Then, Tommy pressed play. The footage was staticky as hell. A camera was sitting on what seemed like a street lamp, pointing right outside a dark alley. After a few seconds of nothing happening, Tommy stiffened when he saw a flash of movement from inside the alley, just barely able to make out Wilbur in his full siren getup, falling off the edge of the roof and onto the lid of a dumpster in the alley, before going limp and rolling off onto the ground. At the same time, Tommy himself came into view of the camera, pausing right outside the alley as Wilbur fell off the dumpster. From this view, he could only see the back of his own head, but Tommy recognized his backpack all the same. Then, the footage showed Tommy walking into the alley and staring at the unconscious figure of Siren for a few moments. They were just barely within view of the camera, and if the two of them had been 2 feet further back, they would have been invisible. But, unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Tommy's mouth went dry as he watched himself drop his backpack and roll up his sleeve. He tugged Wilbur's shirt up, examining the wound before his hands very clearly began to glow. Tommy knew how the rest of the scene went from there. The camera showed the two of them talking in the alley, although there wasn't any sound. Then, Siren got to his feet and stumbled out of the alley, the camera catching a full view of his blindfold mask as he turned down to the cafe. A few seconds later, Tommy emerged from the alley as well, the camera also catching a full view of his face, before he turned down the opposite way of Siren. Then, the footage ended. There was a moment of silence as Sam stared at the phone, his lips pressed into a thin line. That's pretty damning, he finally admitted. I hate to say it, but the committee could definitely arrest you with that. Great, Tommy muttered, shoving his phone back in his pocket. So I'm fucked then. Fucking fantastic. Tommy, you're not fucked, Wilbur immediately said, sliding an arm around his shoulders and guiding him back to their chairs. We're not letting you get arrested. That's a given. Exactly. No way in hell we're letting that green bastard put you in jail, Quackity added on. The rest of the syndicate all murmured in agreement, but it didn't make Tommy feel any better. But what are you going to do to stop him? It's not like you can fucking give in to his demands, Tommy exclaimed, staring wide-eyed at the different villains. Phil folded his hands in front of him and seemed to be struggling to remain composed. What are his demands, Tommy? He said only you knew what he wanted, so what does he want? Tommy laughed, and it was a harsh, bitter thing that tore through his throat in a painful way.
"There's only one thing he wants,"
Tommy said, shaking his head.
"He wants the identities of the syndicate."
And just like that, a hush fell over the group. Tommy wasn't surprised by the tense expressions that lined the table. Nikki and Jack were exchanging nervous glances. Hannah was staring down at her hands. Quackity had straightened up in his seat. Sam just looked sad, while Techno, Phil, and Wilbur all looked as though they had swallowed something sour. "And you're sure that's what he wants?" Phil asked slowly, as if asking for confirmation might make it not true.
"It's the only damn thing he wanted to know when he kidnapped me,"
Tommy confirmed, nodding his head.
"He kept asking me over and over again to tell him your identities, and I kept trying to tell him I didn't know, but he didn't believe me."
Phil took a deep breath, furrowing his brows as he wrung his hands together. "Well, then that's certainly a problem."
"It doesn't matter,"
Wilbur then cut in, pulling Tommy tighter against him.
"We're not letting Tommy get arrested, and that's final."
"I mean, I agree with that, don't get me wrong," Quackity said, pulling his shoes off the table. "But then that means we might have to make a sacrifice." Tommy's eyes widened, and the others at the table all made indignant noises. "Wait, are you saying we should give in to him?" Nikki hissed, glaring at Quackity. "We can't give up anyone, are you insane?"
"Then how do you suggest we solve this, Nikki?"
Quackity challenged, meeting her gaze head-on.
"We can't try to smuggle Tommy out of town, or else Dream will kill one of the kid vigilantes.
If we get all three of them out, he'll kill one of us the next time he sees us. And it's not like we can just keep him locked in a basement for the rest of his life, so what the hell is it gonna be?" Nikki curled her hand on the table into a fist, but didn't have a response for Quackity. Instead, she slumped back into her seat, shooting daggers at Quackity with her eyes.
"Phil, come on, you know I'm right,"
Quackity continued, looking over at Phil. "I don't want to do it either, but I think we need to at least talk about the possibility of sacrificing someone. Because if we can't find an alternate solution, we can probably get Dream off our asses if we give him one skull."
"One skull? You mean one sacrifice instead of all of us?"
Techno asked, watching Quackity with something dangerous in his eyes.
"Exactly.
Dream isn't an idiot. He knows he's not going to get all of us to reveal ourselves for Tommy's sake. But I'm sure he'd drop the warrant shit if we gave him one person that he feels is worth the trade-off," Quackity explained, leaning back in his seat. Another silence descended over the table. Now, the looks the syndicate were sharing were filled with suspicion. The question now hung over their heads like a cloud. Who could the sacrifice be? Finally, after a few beats, Phil spoke up. "While I don't want us to jump to sacrifice yet," he began, and Tommy straightened up hopefully in his seat, "I do think it's worth a discussion." Just as quickly, Tommy slumped back down. He didn't want to sit and listen to the syndicate debate about who they were going to sacrifice on his behalf. It was a nightmare scenario, and the thought of them even entertaining the idea was ridiculous.
"No one is sacrificing themselves for me,"
Tommy cut in, glaring at Phil.
"I'm not a little kid you need to protect. I can handle going to jail."
"Tommy, there's no need to get all noble right now," Phil told him gently. "We're just discussing possibilities. And either way, we're not letting you go to prison." Tommy clenched his jaw, wanting to argue, but knew it would be pointless. If Phil wanted them to discuss options, they were going to discuss options whether he liked it or not.
"This is fucking stupid,"
Tommy muttered, folding his arms over his chest. There was another beat of silence around the table. As expected, though, Quackity spoke up first. "So if this is an open discussion, then can I start out with a suggestion?"
Techno huffed. "If it's anyone beside yourself, we're gonna have problems."
Quackity rolled his eyes. "While I have no issue with volunteering myself, let's be real. No one even knows I'm associated with the syndicate. Dream wouldn't give two shits about me compared to the rest of you guys."
"Typical,"
Techno muttered, shaking his head.
Look, I'm just being honest, man,
Quackity said, holding his hands up in surrender. If you want someone that Dream would possibly take back, though they're not one of the big three, Sam would probably be the best bet. Hannah let out a sharp gasp at this. Fuck off, Quackity! Sam isn't going back to the heroes. The committee literally has it out for him. I mean, he has a point. Sam muttered, dropping his eyes to the table. No, don't be ridiculous. You're not going back there. Hannah insisted, putting a hand on Sam's arm. Besides, if we want someone the heroes have a grudge against, but can't reasonably be outright cruel to, then I think, while just speaking from a totally objective place, Nikki would be a good option. Oi! Back the fuck off, Hannah! Jack shouted, frowning at her. Why the hell would you even say that? Because Dream's had it out for her ever since she choked Sapnap that one time, Hannah exclaimed, gesturing towards Nikki. Look, Nikki, you know I have nothing against you. I'm just speaking from a logical standpoint here, but Dream would probably jump at the chance to get your identity. Nikki scowled. Yeah, I fucking get that. But it's awfully bold of you to suggest me when you could be an option too. Hannah barked out a laugh at this. Me? Dream barely even knows I exist. I doubt he'd give two shits about finding out who I am. Then what about both you and Quackity, since you're both so eager to point fingers? Jack suggested, raising an eyebrow at Hannah. Jesto with a few rose-thorn sprinkles on top? Hey! Quackity protested. What the fuck does rose-thorn sprinkles even mean? Hannah asked, glaring at Jack. It means that neither of you would be enough to get Dream to back off on your own, but if we put you two together, Dream might accept that for a sacrifice. Jack explained. Quackity's like a sundae, and we throw some rose-thorn sprinkles on top to sweeten the deal. I told you already, Dream doesn't even know I work with the Syndicate. Quackity pushed, leaning forward in his seat. He won't care. Again, that's why we have the Quackity sundae with the rose— If you say rose-thorn sprinkles again, I'm gonna reach across that table and punch you, Jack. Hannah snapped, glaring at him. Hannah, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Nikki shot back, lifting one of her hands off the table. Oh fuck. Were they about to fight? Tommy stiffened in his seat as he wondered if he was going to need to heal Nikki and Hannah in a minute, but was stopped when someone else spoke up.
All of you shut up,
Wilbur ordered, his voice echoing around the room. Instantly, everyone else in the room fell silent, although Nikki and Hannah continued to glare at one another from across the table. The silence held for a few beats. Tommy tried to open his mouth to speak, but quickly realized Wilbur had directed the order to everyone in the room, which included him. Good. Wilbur nodded after a few seconds. Now, I think there was one obvious choice here that none of you have suggested yet. But first,
you can all speak again.
Did you really need to shut us all up for that? Phil asked, raising an eyebrow at Wilbur. Considering you were all being fucking idiots, yeah, I think I did. Wilbur nodded, not looking ashamed of what he'd done at all. Anyway, like I said, there's an obvious choice here. The only person that even makes sense to sacrifice. Quackity gave Wilbur a suspicious look. Who? A feeling of dread curled into Tommy's gut before Wilbur even said the words, as if he already knew what his brother was going to say. Meeting Quackity's gaze evenly, one word left Wilbur's mouth. Me. Tommy's head whipped back towards Wilbur. What the— No, it's not gonna be you! Tommy nearly shouted, grabbing Wilbur's shoulder and forcing him to meet his eyes. Don't be fucking stupid, Will. You're not gonna give up your goddamn identity for me. Wilbur gave Tommy a sad look. Toms, come on. I'm the only person that makes sense. No, you fucking don't! Tommy argued, his heart rate picking up speed. I do. Wilbur repeated. Dream needs a skull big enough to satisfy him with just one of the Syndicate's members' identities, so one of the leaders should be more than enough. But more importantly, I'm the entire reason you're in this mess in the first place. The security footage Dream has on you is literally of you healing me. If you hadn't done that, none of this would be happening right now. Oh, don't go blaming yourself again, you dumb shithead! Tommy snapped, glaring at Wilbur. I chose to save your life that night. I knew that if I got caught there'd be consequences. You didn't ask me to heal you, so stop acting like it's your fucking fault. But even ignoring that, I'm still the reason you're here now. Wilbur pushed, not reacting to Tommy's anger. I sought you out after you healed me. I decided to befriend you in the cafe. I gave your address to Techno. It's all been me. I'm the only person that makes sense. Wilbur. Techno cut in, glaring at his younger brother with a ferocity that made even Tommy want to shrink back, despite it not being directed at him. You're not sacrificing yourself. End of story. Techno kindly shut the fuck up. Wilbur shot back, although he didn't use his siren voice to force anyone into silence this time. Trust me, I've thought this through, and Dream won't back off unless he gets me, Techno, or Phil. And out of the three of us, I'm the one who has fucked Tommy over the most, so I need to be the one to make it up. You haven't fucked me over? Yes, I have. We literally talked about this last week. Yeah, but I didn't mean you should go fucking sacrifice yourself for me. Look, someone has to do it, so it might as well— Wilbur! Tommy! Phil yelled, his booming voice silencing both the boys immediately. Stop shouting at each other for 2 seconds so we can talk about this as a group. Tommy scowled at Phil. You're not seriously going to entertain the idea of Wilbur sacrificing himself like a goddamn idiot, are you? Phil was silent for a beat, sighing as he pinched the bridge of his nose. Trust me, I don't like the idea any better than you do, Tommy. But we're discussing options right now, not making any decisions. Ideally, though, we won't have to sacrifice anyone, he explained, his talons clicking against the table as he set his hand back down. Wait, can I bring up a point to counter Wilbur volunteering? Nikki spoke up, her voice having gone soft again after snapping at Hannah. Nikki. No, Wilbur, I have a point, and you're going to let me say it, Nikki said, staring the man down. Ignoring all personal feelings, you still can't be the one we sacrifice. Why not? Wilbur challenged, raising an eyebrow. Nikki gave him a look that just screamed, "You're an idiot." If you give yourself up, all Dream has to do is look at your file and see the files for Phil and Techno, and he'll figure out who Zephyrus and Blade are too. That's how Tubbo and Ronbu figured you guys out, right? For the first time since bringing this point up, Wilbur actually seemed taken aback. She's got a point. Techno grunted. That's exactly how the kids figured us out. Wilbur frowned. But no, come on! They only figured you guys out because Techno has fucking pink hair. If Techno just dyed his hair, started wearing a wig or something as the Blade, then it'd be fine. I don't know, Wilbur. Phil and Techno still have the same heights and builds as the Blade and Zephyrus, so it'd at least make Dream suspicious. Sam added, leaning back in his seat. Well, he's not going to accept anyone else besides one of us three. You're lying to yourselves if you don't think that's the case. Wilbur argued, glaring at the rest of the table. Tommy was getting a headache now. He groaned and dropped his head into his hands, and quickly felt warm fingers run through his hair. Tommy almost leaned into the comforting touch, but stopped himself at the last second, instead slapping Wilbur's hand away as he glared at his brother through his fingers. Hurt flashed in Wilbur's eyes as he pulled his hand back. Tommy would have felt guilty if Wilbur wasn't being such an idiot. He didn't even want to think about Wilbur being the one to sacrifice himself. After all the bullshit he'd gone through to get this family, he refused to lose it so quickly. Look, I think we've discussed the possibilities of who to sacrifice enough for tonight, Phil then said, sounding much calmer than he had before. I'd rather try and focus on alternative options. I mean, I feel like we only have one other option if we're not going to give him anyone's identity. Techno shrugged, drawing all eyes back to him. We need to kill Dream. He said it so simply, as if it would be the easiest thing in the world. A wave of nausea washed over Tommy. More killing. Great. You know, as great as that sounds to me, I don't actually think that's the best idea. Quackity chimed in. Trust me, I don't have any moral qualms about killing the green bastard. But didn't he say in the video that 404 helped him out with finding that footage? If we kill Dream, 404 will just send out the warrant for Tommy instead, Nikki murmured, gnawing on her lip. Then we just kill both Dream and 404. Techno pushed, fingers drumming along the boar skull in front of him. Wouldn't we have to kill Flame too? Jack asked, eyebrows pinched. He was at the warehouse when we rescued Tommy, so he probably also knows about the footage. Tommy stiffened at the mention of Flame's name. He thought back to those days in the warehouse, how guilty Flame looked when he realized he couldn't help Tommy, how he refused to leave his side to make sure Dream didn't do anything to hurt him, how much Tommy saw of himself in the hero. You can't kill Flame, Tommy said without thinking. Hell, you shouldn't even kill any of them, but especially not Flame. He actually tried convincing Dream to let me go when we found out Dream had kidnapped me. Wait, Flame wanted to let you go? Wilbur asked, leaning towards Tommy. He did, but Dream wouldn't listen to him, so Flame stayed in the warehouse to keep an eye on me and make sure Dream and 404 didn't do anything to hurt me, Tommy explained, shrinking back in his seat as all the attention turned back to him. He's not a bad guy, trust me. But he could have turned Dream and 404 in, couldn't he? Wilbur challenged. Tommy met Wilbur's eyes and forced himself to keep a poker face. And I could have turned you in for killing all those cops, but I fucking didn't. It's the same goddamn thing. Wilbur flinched back as if he'd been hit. Hurt once again flashed in his dark gaze, but Tommy couldn't think of another way to explain it to Wilbur. I'm not the same as Dream, Wilbur hissed, baring his teeth. Really? Because if you tally up both of your kill counts, let's be real, you definitely have the higher numbers. Tommy snarled, the frustration simmering under his skin boiling to the surface. So get off your high fucking horse, Wilbur. Wilbur opened his mouth, ready to snap back, and Tommy waited for it. He waited for the sharp insult, for Wilbur to either tell him to fuck off or go into even more reasons why he wasn't like Dream. But instead, he paused. He shot a dark look at Tommy and shut his mouth, looking away from him and shifting fully back into his own seat, so he was no longer leaning into Tommy's space. Tommy was tired of this. He hated hearing the syndicate get into arguments about who they were going to sacrifice on his behalf, and he also hated hearing them talk about killing Dream, 404, and Flame like it was no big deal, like they were just obstacles to be dealt with, and not people. Huffing, Tommy slumped back in his seat, and shot Wilbur one last dirty look before meeting the eyes of the rest of the table. Everyone was glancing between him and Wilbur in that awkward way friends always did when two people got into an argument, and everyone else just felt very uncomfortable watching from the sidelines. Tommy knew he probably should have held his tongue better, but he was pissed off about a lot of things right now, and frankly, just didn't care. So... Techno finally broke the silence with a long drawl. We just killed Dream and 404 then. If we kill them, Flame might end up releasing the footage anyway as revenge against us, Phil pointed out, tucking a strand of hair behind his ear. I think it would be better if there was some way we could get Dream to back off without killing him. What, like we scare him? Techno asked, frowning at Phil. Maybe. I don't think there's much we can scare Dream with, but I think if we can talk to him face to face, we might be able to reach an alternate compromise, Phil explained. I doubt he's going to compromise on this. He knows he's got us by the throat. Quackity huffed, rolling his eyes. Very true, but I think it's still worth a try, Phil noted. The only problem with that, though, is that I have no idea how we can talk to Dream one-on-one, Techno pointed out, fiddling with the ends of his braid. If we tell him we want to meet, he's just going to think it's a trap. And if we go out looking for him, he's probably going to avoid us like the plague. Phil sighed, brushing his hair back from his face with one clawed hand. That's very true. While a meeting would be the best chance we have at working this out, I don't see how we can get Dream to agree to show up. So are we just back at square one then? Jack asked, glancing between Techno and Phil. We're not sacrificing someone, but we also have no way to get a meeting with Dream, so we're fucked all around. Or you guys could stop being idiots and just let me go to
No!
All the syndicate members, save for Wilbur, who still seemed like he was pissed at Tommy, snapped at once, cutting Tommy off. Groaning, Tommy flipped the group off, and they ignored him as they went back to their discussion. I think we've all had a very long night. Phil began, dragging a hand down his face as he spoke. And since Dream said we have a couple of days to make a decision, it might be beneficial for us to take some time to think our options over. Almost instantaneously, a wave of relief seemed to wash over the entire group. I agree. Sam nodded, fiddling with his mask in front of him. Let's go home and try to think of alternate ways we can figure this out. Then we can reconvene in a few days. Thank you, Sam. Phil smiled as he put his veil back over his head. With that, I declare this meeting over. Tommy, Will, Techno, let's head out. And with that, the three boys all got out of their chairs and followed Phil out of the meeting room, while the others all began to put their masks back on. Before the door shut behind them, Tommy glanced back and saw Nikki and Hannah talking softly to one another, seeming much calmer than they had been earlier. That was a relief. Things had gotten a bit nasty during the sacrifice discussion, and Tommy would hate for there to be lingering tension in the syndicate because of him. It didn't take long for them to get home. As expected, Tubbo and Ronbu were already waiting for Tommy, both looking eager for answers to what the plan was. Instead of explaining that they didn't come to a conclusion, he just shook his head and headed straight for the stairs, figuring Phil or Techno could explain to the duo. Wilbur was ahead of him on the staircase, also going straight for his room. A part of Tommy figured he should apologize for what he said during the meeting, but he also didn't want to, because he wasn't wrong. Dream and Wilbur really weren't all that different when it came down to it, and that, along with Wilbur's apparent ideas of noble self-sacrifice, were pissing him off. So Tommy hurried back to his room, and he heard him and Wilbur slam their doors shut at the same time. Later that night, Tubbo and Ronbu came and crawled into the bed with him, and the three of them silently decided not to talk about the dark cloud hanging over their heads. Instead, they just turned on Tommy's TV, and Tommy played Animal Crossing while his two best friends watched until they all fell asleep. The next day, things were tense in the Soot household. The six of them, Phil, Techno, Tommy, Wilbur, Tubbo, and Ronbu, all huddled around the dining table, drinking coffee with bleary eyes and giving half-hearted attempts at conversation. Ronbu tried asking Techno about potatoes, which led into a small segment where the two of them talked about gardening, but the topic died out quickly. Phil asked Tommy if he was going to work again today, and Tommy said he wanted to, and Techno quickly volunteered to watch over him during his shift this time. The day passed quickly. Wilbur holed himself up in his room. Phil said he needed some alone time in his office to think over their options, and it wasn't long before Techno joined him. Meanwhile, Tubbo and Ronbu took it upon themselves to try and distract Tommy from his possible upcoming prison sentence. It was like the days they'd spent on the sagging couch in their tiny apartment, watching nature documentaries and bickering about the most random things. They were all piled onto the couch in the living room, watching whatever Tommy wanted on the big TV that hung on the wall. At one point, Tubbo actually had to go to Tommy's room because he got called in to do a last-minute work assignment. Because despite everything, he and Ronbu still had jobs. So that just left Tommy and Ronbu on the couch, and Tommy liked watching nature documentaries with Ronbu a lot better than Tubbo, because he actually was interested in a lot of the strange animals they learned about, and would frequently ask questions that Tommy would jump to answer. Surprisingly, it was a good day, given the circumstances. When the sun began to dip towards the hills, Tommy changed out of his pajamas, said his goodbyes to Tubbo and Ronbu, before he and Techno headed out. The ride to the cafe was quiet, but not in an awkward way. Techno had soft, classical music playing over the speakers, and Tommy had his head leaning against the window, watching the green and orange trees that lined the sides of the road turn into little more than blurs as the car drove by. It was a pleasant contrast to the chaos of the night before. Although Tommy could still see the tension lining Techno's shoulders, he didn't seem visibly upset about the situation, and that alone was easing Tommy's nerves just a bit. They got to the cafe, and Foolish almost started tearing up again when he spotted Tommy walking in. He wasted no time in running out of the cafe as quickly as he could, with Tommy filling his spot without any trouble or fanfare. Unlike Wilbur, Techno didn't order anything, instead immediately settling himself at Wilbur's usual table. As Tommy ran the bottle of honey under some hot water to make it easier to squeeze, he watched as Techno reached into a black bag he'd brought with him, pulling out a thick book with yellowed pages before flipping it open to read. For the first few minutes of the shift, there was no line. All the customers inside had already been given their drinks by Foolish, so Tommy didn't have much to do. He kept glancing at Techno, wondering if he should make him something to drink despite him not ordering anything. After all, Tommy knew what he liked, and if he didn't want it, he could just throw it out. Before Tommy could blink twice, he found himself pulling out the tea bags and preparing a cup of Earl Grey. As he let the tea steep in the hot water, he steamed a bit of milk and carefully poured the frothy mixture on top of the tea. Then he grabbed some vanilla extract from the cabinet and poured a few drops in there as well, stirring it quickly before slapping a lid on the cup and sliding it onto the pickup bar. "Techno, come get your drink," Tommy called out, waving him down. Techno glanced up from his book and frowned. He replaced the bookmark in his book and pushed to his feet, folding his arms over his chest as he eyed the drink sitting at the pickup spot. "I didn't order anything," he said, picking up the cup and eyeing the blank side of it. It wasn't like Tommy had needed to write that one down after all, considering he was just making it for Techno for fun. "I know, but I figured you might as well get something to drink since you're going to be here for my whole shift," Tommy explained, shrugging as he rinsed out the cup for the steamed milk. "If you don't want it, you can throw it out." After staring at Tommy for a beat, Techno took a hesitant sip before letting out a pleased hum. "London fog," he muttered, nodding to himself. "Thanks, Tommy." Then, before Tommy could argue, Techno was digging into his pocket and pulling out a handful of cash. "Tech, I didn't take it and put it in the register. I wouldn't want to mess with Puffy's profit," Techno huffed. Tommy frowned as he counted the dollars. "This is way more than that drink costs." Techno, who was already walking back towards his table, just shrugged. "Put it in the tip jar, then." Fighting the urge to roll his eyes, Tommy dropped the extra change in the tip jar. Fucking rich people. Just had cash on them at all times and weren't even sure how much they were carrying. Typical. Luckily, or unluckily, depending on how you define it, the usual flow of customers resumed after that. The rest of the evening passed by how it always did. Tommy burned his hand on the espresso machine for the billionth time and had to hide his skin glowing as it healed itself. He tried to make a cappuccino for a Karen, and she tried to lecture him for 10 minutes on how to make it properly. He muttered some things under his breath that would get him fired if Puffy heard it. Just business as usual all around. Time passed quickly. Although the worry about his current situation lingered in the back of his mind, it wasn't that difficult for Tommy to lose himself in the comforting routine. As it got later into the evening, more customers began to filter out, and soon enough Techno was the only one left in the shop, and it was closing time once again. Tommy went through his usual cleanup routine of wiping down the equipment, taking out the trash, and putting all the ingredients back in their correct places. Techno noticed that he was cleaning up and moved to stand by the door, watching the outside like a sentinel, even without a sword on his hip. Things were quiet at first, and for once Tommy was content to leave it that way. With his shift already being over, there was no longer anything to distract Tommy from his anxiety, and he was once again being eaten up by worry over this whole mess. He really didn't want to go to prison, but he didn't want anyone else to go to prison for him either. The very idea of Wilbur pulling some stupid, self-sacrificial move made him sick to his stomach, which was only worsened by the bitterness that had been hanging between them since Tommy snapped at Wilbur during the syndicate meeting the night before. So yeah, Tommy was fine with letting things be quiet, because he had a lot going through his mind. But to Tommy's surprise, right as he took out the mop to wipe down the floors, Techno actually spoke up, for the first time since he'd gotten his tea. So what are your thoughts on this whole prison thing? Techno asked, with all the grace of a bull in a china shop. Huffing, Tommy kept his eyes on the ground as he started pushing the mop across the floor. I'm still pissed at the idea of any of you guys sacrificing yourself for me. Techno hummed. I definitely wasn't thrilled when we were talking about that yesterday, but it's not like we can just let you get arrested for helping us. It's a shitty situation all around, but let's be real. I'd go to prison for what, 3 years? I'm not technically a villain, I just help you guys out and shit. If any of you guys revealed your identities and got arrested, you'd probably never see the light of day again. Tommy said, pushing the mop with a bit more force than strictly necessary. I think you have a bit too much faith in the system to think you'd only get 3 years. Techno snorted. Stiffening, Tommy glanced up at Techno and saw he was now flipping through the pages of his book, but didn't seem to actually be reading any of it. How long do you think I'd get then? Tommy asked, struggling to keep his voice even. Techno shrugged. I don't know, man. Technically, the usual sentence for assisting criminal activities would be somewhere around 3 to 5 years. But the Hero Committee would definitely try to pin more on you. They'd want to make an example of you, so that other people don't get the same idea and start trying to heal villains. Which is why our top priority right now is to make sure you don't end up behind bars. Gulping, Tommy stared at Techno for a beat, before he put his head back down and resumed his mopping. His heart was pounding in his chest at this new information, but he tried to force himself to calm down by focusing on the cleaning. So am I really just fucked then? He asked, unable to keep a sliver of fear from leaking into his tone. There was no hesitation from Techno when he responded. No, we're not letting you get screwed over like that. Techno reassured him, sounding so calm that Tommy couldn't help but relax the tiniest bit. Even if we gotta smuggle you, Tubbo, and Ranbu out of here in suitcases, we'll do that before we let the committee get its hands on you. Tommy snorted at the mental image, and the tightness in his chest unwound just a bit. I think Tubbo is the only one of us who could fit into a suitcase. I don't know about that. Ranbu seems pretty bendy. Techno commented, leaning back against the wall. Well, honestly, you have a fair point there. Tommy replied, chuckling a bit as he remembered all the terrifying ways Ranbu had won Twister games in the past. But, is our only alternative plan still to try and meet with Dream to talk it out? At the moment, yeah. But Phil is contacting some outside resources, and we're hoping one of those might be able to help fix the situation. Techno explained. That's good, Tommy muttered, pushing the mop further across the room. That's, really good. Good idea. We're hoping so. Techno shrugged again. Though it seems like it might be hard to get Wilbur off this whole self-sacrifice idea he seems to be fixated on. Gritting his teeth again at the reminder, Tommy nodded. He can say that again. He's being such a fucking idiot, avoiding me all day today like the dramatic bitch he is. He has a tendency to do that when he's mad about something. Techno said, shoving his book in his backpack. I think he's more upset about you comparing him to Dream than anything else, though. Looking up from the floor again, Tommy narrowed his eyes. Are you gonna scold me for that? Techno shook his head. Nah. I think you made a fair point. Will's got this whole shtick where he can call himself the bad guy and claim he's fine with that. But only if he's being called a bad guy in a way that lines up with whatever story he's telling himself in his head. Like if you call him out on something he thinks he was in the right for doing, or in this case compare him to someone he hates, he's gonna get real defensive or upset about that. Tommy raised an eyebrow. You don't mind being called a bad guy, though? I don't really see the point in labeling myself a good guy or bad guy. I have my goals, and I do what I need to get them done. That's all I care about. Techno explained, tucking a strand of pink hair behind his ear. But all that aside, I know my little brother. And he's got a lot of guilt over you getting dragged into our world, which is why he's pushing the self-sacrifice thing so hard. That's stupid, though. He explained to me why he gave you my number that one night, and it wasn't something malicious. Tommy argued, frowning at Techno. I thought you would have figured out by now that Wilbur blames himself for just about everything, even when it doesn't make sense. Techno snorted, rolling his eyes. Yeah, I think I'm starting to realize that, Tommy muttered, wheeling the mop bucket back to the closet. Techno was quiet as Tommy put away the rest of the cleaning items, finally having finished what he needed to do for closing. After Tommy hung up his apron and slung his backpack over his shoulder, Techno took a look around outside the cafe doors before he gave Tommy the all-clear. They didn't speak again until they were back in the car, driving safely away from the cafe. I still think you should talk to Wilbur sometime tonight, Techno said, picking up the conversation from where they'd left off like there'd been no pause. Mostly because I'm gonna bang my head into a wall if tomorrow we have another painfully awkward breakfast like this morning. I guess you're right, Tommy grumbled, sliding down in the leather seat. I don't like fighting with him anyway, so might as well just stop letting him be a little bitch and make him talk this out. If it doesn't work, let me know, and we can hide in my room to eat breakfast. Techno joked, shooting Tommy a sly smile. Tommy grinned. Sounds like a plan. They made it home without issue. Once they were inside, Techno headed to Phil's office, while Tommy went straight for his room. He was startled when he saw Tubbo and Ronbu had both seemingly fallen asleep in his bed while he was at work, and put his stuff down as quietly as possible before leaving the room again. Tommy was way too wired still to even think about sleep. There was still the lingering anxiety about the prison sentence hanging over his head. And then there was the entire conversation with Techno about Wilbur. Standing outside his room, Tommy glanced across to Wilbur's room, noticing the light on under the door. While he could go downstairs and watch movies on the couch until he got tired, he'd promised Techno he'd try to talk to Wilbur, and right now seemed like the perfect opportunity. Groaning to himself, Tommy trudged across the hall and didn't let himself think before he knocked on the door 3 times.
Who is it?
Wilbur called out from behind the door almost immediately. It's me, Tommy called back, grimacing at how awkward he sounded. Can we talk? There was a pause. The fact that Wilbur didn't say yes as soon as he asked was enough to make him wince, even though he knew it wasn't nearly as big of a deal as he was making it out to be. Then, after a few beats,
Fine.
Breathing a sigh of relief, Tommy pushed open the door to Wilbur's room. It had actually been a while since Tommy had been in Wilbur's room. In fact, he might not have been in there since before he got kidnapped, and he could tell because it was the cleanest he'd ever seen it. Sure, there was still a bunch of dirty laundry in there, but it was all shoved into a single corner this time. And yeah, there was still a ton of loose papers, but they were all contained to his desk, with his bed actually being cleared to lay down on. String lights crisscrossed over the bed, reflecting a soft orange glow across the entire room. Wilbur was settled against his pillows with his guitar on his lap, wearing the same pajamas he'd worn at breakfast that morning, his hair a frizzy mess of curls. Wilbur eyed Tommy warily as the door clicked shut behind him. There was an awkward moment where they both just stared at each other, before Tommy walked over to sit on the edge of Wilbur's bed. Once he was settled down again, Wilbur spoke. You just got home from work? Tommy nodded. Yep. And you decided you needed to talk right now? He pushed. Yeah. Tubbo and Ranvu were sleeping in my room, so I can't hang out in there. Plus I saw your light, so I knew you were awake. Figured no time like the present. Tommy shrugged, picking at a stray thread on his shirt. Wilbur raised an eyebrow and pushed his guitar off his lap, setting it on the other side of the bed.
Are you here to apologize, then?
Apologize?
Tommy scoffed. No, I have nothing to apologize for. If anything, you should be apologizing to me.
The raised eyebrow quickly dropped as Wilbur frowned.
The fuck do I have to apologize to you for? For being an idiot with the whole "I'm gonna sacrifice myself for you, Tommy" bullshit you pulled at the meeting last night.
Tommy explained, fighting the urge to roll his eyes.
You're still going on about that?
Wilbur snapped.
It's called taking responsibility for your actions, Tommy. But I guess you wouldn't know about that since you're an immature goddamn child.
Ouch. While Wilbur had called Tommy an immature child before, he had always said it with an air of fond teasing. It was part of their banter. Tommy called Wilbur an old man, he called Tommy a child. It had never been something Wilbur had said as an actual insult. But this time, it'd be impossible to mistake his words as anything but.
That's not taking responsibility for your actions, you fucking prick!
Tommy snapped back, his already thin patience waning.
It's called feeling guilty over things you shouldn't because you want to throw yourself a goddamn pity party instead of dealing with your shit.
Wilbur recoiled, his frown deepening even more.
I'm not throwing myself a pity party. I'm the one who dragged you into the shit. I don't know why you're acting like I didn't. Not everything is about you, Wilbur.
Tommy shot back.
It wasn't just you. It was Techno and Phil and Nikki and basically fucking everyone in the goddamn syndicate. But I was the one who gave Techno my address, I know. You've said it about 100 damn times.
Tommy hissed. Huffing, Wilbur folded his arms over his chest.
I just don't get why you're so pissed at me about this. I said I was going to try and make up for all the shitty stuff I did. This is me trying to fix what I fucked up.
At this, Tommy paused. Was Wilbur really that stupid? He searched Wilbur's eyes, trying to see if he was just saying shit, but it seemed like he was telling the truth.
If this is you trying to fix all that, then you're going about it in a really shitty way.
Tommy scoffed, although his voice was a bit lower now.
What, trying to keep you from going to jail isn't a good thing?
Wilbur asked sharply, narrowing his eyes.
No, actually it's not,
Tommy said, meeting Wilbur's eyes.
When you fuck up, you don't get to fix it by just sacrificing yourself for some bullshit noble cause. If you actually want to fix things, you need to stay. Stick around and face what you did instead of just jumping at the first opportunity to become a martyr.
Wilbur clenched his jaw, eyes dropping to his lap.
Did you get that from one of Phil's spiels about being a better person or whatever the fuck?
Tommy ignored the weak attempt to change the subject.
I'm serious, Will. How the hell do you think you're helping me by going to jail for the rest of your life?
A beat passed. Wilbur took his glasses off and began to fiddle with them in his lap.
I thought it would be the best option for everyone involved.
Wilbur muttered, keeping his head down.
I finally have a family outside of Tubbo and Ranbu for the first time in my whole life. And you thought that me losing my brother was the best way to make it up to me?
Tommy asked softly.
Wilbur flinched, continuing to mess with his glasses. I don't know, it just made the most sense to me, he muttered.
Another moment of silence passed, and Wilbur looked up again.
Plus, after I suggested it, you literally compared me to the man who kidnapped you. What was I supposed to think about that?
Oh.
Shit, look, I didn't mean it like that, Tommy said, desperately trying to backpedal. It's hard to explain, but basically when Flame found out Dream had kidnapped me, he almost turned Dream and 404 in. But in the end he didn't, because he said they were his family. He didn't approve of what they did, but he didn't want to send them to jail, and I guess, I don't know, I'm the same way. I don't like that you killed all those people, Will, but you're my family. I'd rather stick by you even when you do shit I don't like than not have you around. And not having me around includes me being in jail,
Wilbur muttered, seeming a bit calmer now. Yeah, basically. Tommy agreed. And as stupid as it sounds, given all the shit we've dealt with, I don't actually like to get you involved in my shit either. Now this made Wilbur look up, and instead of scowling at Tommy like before, he was just frowning, like he was confused. What do you mean? I mean, like, I chose to heal you that night in the alley. I knew that if I got caught, I could be arrested, but I did it anyway. I don't think you should get thrown in jail for my choice, Tommy explained. Or like back when Dream and 404 had me kidnapped, they threatened to kidnap you too. Like Wilbursut, not Siren. And I didn't know you were Siren at the time, so the idea of you getting dragged into that too just scared the shit out of me. Wait, why would Dream and 404 want to kidnap me as a civilian? Wilbur asked. Tommy shrugged. When 404 watched my dreams that one time, you kept popping up in all of them, and he ended up thinking you were my brother. Like, legally, you know? So he told Dream about you, so that they could threaten you to get me to talk. Pausing, Tommy took a shaky breath. And again, I hadn't really made the connection you were Siren yet, so I was fucking terrified of what they'd do to you. I didn't want you to get hurt because of me. And even though I know who you are now, that's still true. I don't want you getting thrown in jail for me. Wilbur was silent for a moment, no longer fiddling with his glasses, and instead just staring at his lap. His frown fully faded, leaving something like regret in its place. I'm sorry, Wilbur finally said, dropping his glasses onto the bed. I didn't think about things like that. It's okay. Tommy nodded, wrapping his arms around himself. I'm sorry for not explaining what I meant when I said you were like Dream. It's all right. Wilbur reassured him. How you explained it made sense. Another beat passed between them, and Tommy shifted on the bed so he was fully facing Wilbur. Can I hug you now, you fucking idiot? Tommy asked. A small smile quirked the corners of Wilbur's lips. You're so clingy, he teased as he leaned forward, wrapping his arms around Tommy's shoulders to hug him tightly. Pretty bold of you to call me the clingy one out of the two of us, Tommy scoffed as he buried his face in Wilbur's shoulder. Says the one who just begged me not to go to jail because you'd miss me. Wilbur shot back, his chuckles reverberating through his shoulders. You know, I think I've changed my mind, actually. Go to jail and stop annoying me all the time. Tommy teased, pulling back from the hug after a few moments. Too bad. You're stuck with me now. Wilbur grinned, reaching out to ruffle Tommy's hair. Tommy laughed as he slapped Wilbur's hand away from his head. Wilbur smacked the back of his head in retaliation before he leaned back against his pillows, picking up his guitar off the side of the bed and gesturing for Tommy to sit with him. As Tommy scrambled over against the pillows as well, Wilbur's smile faded, and he reached over to rest a hand on Tommy's shoulder once he was settled. We're going to find a way out of this, Wilbur promised him, staring right into his eyes. Swallowing down a lump in his throat, Tommy nodded. I believe you will. The problem was that, again, Tommy knew there wasn't anyone who could promise that for sure. But he let the reassurance soothe his anxiety anyway, and tried to shove it all out of his mind as he listened to Wilbur start playing a new song on his guitar, wanting to get Tommy's opinion. Another day came and went, and there was still no progress on their plan. Dream had said he'd give Tommy a few days to decide, but he hadn't specified exactly how many days that meant. The more time passed, the more Tommy's anxiety grew. When was their time going to be up? When was Dream going to get tired of waiting for an answer and just send out the warrant for Tommy's arrest? As Tommy went through another shift like usual, he couldn't help his heart from skipping a beat every time the door chimed with a new customer. He was just waiting for the moment a police officer strolled in, holding up a pair of handcuffs and telling Tommy he was under arrest. This time, Hannah was keeping an eye on Tommy during his shift. She hung out at a different table than Wilbur usually was at, playing some kind of a video game on a bulky laptop the entire time. One benefit of knowing the syndicate's identities now was that they were no longer confined to just showing up after work hours in their full villain get-ups. Now, everyone else in the cafe was oblivious to the fact that there was a villain in their midst. But Tommy could still be watched over all the same. The shift was calm. By the end of it, the smell of coffee beans was ingrained under his fingernails, and he had a dark splotch on his jeans from where he'd accidentally spilled black tea on himself. Because Techno wasn't there to pick him up, Hannah said she was going to walk him all the way back to the Soot's house. He knew it was pointless to try and argue that she didn't need to walk him all the way, and frankly, he didn't actually want to argue that. Even though he felt guilty about Hannah needing to escort him all the way back to his home, he was more nervous than ever about Dream, and he knew Hannah wouldn't let anything happen to him. "And we're done," Tommy muttered as he twisted the key in the door, locking up the cafe. Hannah smiled and offered her arm. "Let's get going then." Rolling his eyes at the gesture, Tommy looped his arm through hers. "You don't need to hold on to me, you know." "This isn't for you," Hannah snorted. "I don't want creepy men to catcall me, and they won't with you and I walking like this. Couldn't you just, choke a guy with a vine if he pulls shit with you?" Tommy asked as they started down the sidewalk towards the subway. "I could, but I'm not in costume right now, so I'd rather avoid showing my powers to other people if I can," Hannah explained. "Though, of course, if I'm subtle about it." Trailing off, Hannah shot Tommy a mischievous grin as a small flower blossomed from her hair right above her ear. Tommy snorted. "I'm sure that was very necessary." "It was," Hannah argued. "The more plants I have on me, the more energy I have. So if I'm going to be guarding you on this walk, then—" Suddenly, Hannah was cut off by loud laughter coming from across the street. Stiffening, Hannah whipped around to see the possible threat. Tommy did the same, his heart pounding in his ears. But as soon as he spotted who it was, he let out a breath of relief. Walking on the opposite side of the street from Hannah and Tommy, Monarch and Aurelian were laughing as they talked with one another. Tommy hadn't seen the two of them since that night he healed Aurelian, and it was nice to know that neither of them looked any worse for wear. Tommy was about to wave to the two vigilantes when a realization hit him in the face. The Syndicate needed to find a way to meet with Dream, but Dream would think any meeting the Syndicate arranged would be a trap. While he'd already met with Nuke and Ender to pass his threat along, he also was under the assumption the two of them were part of the Syndicate as well. But Dream didn't know about Tommy's connection to Monarch and Aurelian. He'd only met them once, and Dream hadn't brought them up to Tommy at all when he had been kidnapped. As far as Dream knew, the two vigilantes had no idea who Tommy was. Which meant that Dream wouldn't have any reason to be suspicious if the two of them asked to meet with him. Holy shit. Tommy might have just found his way out of this mess. "Monarch! Aurelian!" Tommy called out, aggressively waving the two vigilantes down. The two of them immediately turned towards his voice, waiting as he rushed across the street with Hannah in tow.
"Tommy?"
Monarch greeted, dipping their head.
"It's a pleasure to see you again. It's been a while."
"Yeah, there's a reason for that," Tommy told them, not bothering with any preamble.
"Did something happen?"
Aurelian asked, tilting his head a bit to the side. "You could say that again," Tommy huffed. "Dream fucking kidnapped me." Both vigilantes reeled back.
What?
They both hissed in unison. "Dream kidnapped me for helping the Syndicate," Tommy explained in a rush. "But anyway, I got rescued, but I'm in a bit of trouble again."
What's going on?
Monarch asked, furrowing their brows.
Also, is it okay for your friend to hear this?
They added after a beat, pointing at Hannah. Oh yeah, they didn't know Hannah was Rosethorn. "Yeah, she's fine, don't worry about her," Tommy said, ignoring the confused look Hannah was giving him. "Long story short, Dream's blackmailing me now because he wants to send me to prison."
"Wait, can we go back to the part where you got kidnapped?"
Aurelian questioned.
"Hang on,
Monarch told their partner before turning back to Tommy.
What are you planning to do?"
At this, Tommy grinned. Well, actually, I have an idea that I think you two can help with.